Right. Hello and welcome everyone to our June Facebook Live. I'm Tim Tracy from Groundworks. We're the nation's leading foundation repair company. I've been in the construction industry for a little over 20 years, but today's guest has provided a lot of education and insight about the foundation industry for me over the last 3 years. Coming to us live from Colorado at Complete Basement Systems, our guest speaker and basement expert, Brian Black.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Appreciate the introduction and welcome. So, hey guys, as Tim said, my name is Brian. I'm the senior sales manager here at Complete Basement Systems. I have been in the foundation repair, basement waterproofing industry a little over 10 years. I've performed probably well over 1,000 inspections with actual homeowners that are having basement waterproofing issues. And as Tim said, I'm calling from Denver, Colorado today. So excited to be with you and excited to go through this information.
Well, welcome and thanks for coming on our Groundworks live segment today. Everything a homeowner should know about basement moisture. So we're going to talk today about why do basements leak, how to solve your wet basement issues, the do's and don'ts of waterproofing, and we're going to talk about the opposite scenario. How does not enough rain impact your home? Once again, I want to ask the viewers to submit any questions you may have during the segment, and Brian and I will get to those at the end and make sure we answer your questions. So to start us off, I'm going to pass it over to our basement expert today. Brian, before we can understand what makes a good basement waterproofing system, we must first understand why basements leak. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Yeah, it really boils down to a few main reasons, and this is a great way to start the segment too, is to understand what causes a basement to leak or why do basements leak. So the first thing to look at, and I think you can see it on your PowerPoint here, is that we have a different weather that occurs throughout the country. So our spring rains. If you look at this map that you're seeing on the PowerPoint, you can see that we have been having above average precipitation January through March 2021, and it's really centralized here in Colorado and then the Midwestern states, Nebraska, Kansas, and even bits of Michigan or Missouri and Iowa. And then when you go down to the southeast, we're seeing above average precipitation also in some of those southeast states, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So those are the areas right now that are seeing above average precipitation and rainfall. These other areas though, and so obviously, you know, Tim, you expect these areas, if you're getting a bunch of spring rains, that's typically when we see basements leak. Now, I do want to call out some of these areas that are in the tan. So these are our record drought when you see up in North Dakota and South Dakota. And then throughout the Northeast, you see much below and below average on the West Coast and parts of the South. You're seeing below average precipitation. Now, the thing to talk about here is when you have below average rainfall, what happens is our clay soils, they shrink in size when we're in a drought scenario. As clay soils lose moisture, they shrink in size. And so what can happen for you homeowners that are in these darker tan areas or even drought areas, if you get a heavy rain, so if you get a downpour, because the soil's dried out, that can actually cause your basement to leak. So even though you're below average precipitation, if you do get a heavy rainfall, you can see a wet basement. So be on the lookout for that. Other things to pay attention to really are how the home is constructed. So what we want to talk about here is you know, when a home is built, a hole is dug in the earth. And when you dig a hole in the earth, you're disturbing what we would call layered virgin soil. So what that means is, as you dig down, you can see this when if you ever look at pictures of the Grand Canyon, if you ever have actually gone to a home that's being excavated, you see as you go down, you'll see multiple different soil layers, and it's not uncommon just in the hole that is dug for a home to see 6, 7, 8 different soil layers adjacent to the foundation wall or where the foundation wall will be poured. So why am I bringing that up, right? Why am I talking about these different soil layers? Well, these soil layers actually protect and prevent water from easily penetrating through that soil. And so when you dig this clay bowl, you can see down in the bottom left slide, when you dig this clay bowl, you're essentially, it's not much different than if you stuck a 5-gallon bucket out in the outside and then it rained, that 5-gallon bucket would fill up. Those layers essentially act like that. So if we left that hole open in the earth and then it rained, we get these spring rains, these downpours, that hole that we dig for our homes is going to fill up with water. Now, obviously we don't leave these holes exposed. We pour foundations and we block foundations. We set foundations down in these holes, and then we put soil adjacent the home. And you can see that here on this top slide. You can see that a footing is poured, the foundation wall is built, the floor is poured, and then the backfill soil is then set next to it. The problem and really the thing to pay attention to here is what we call that clay bowl. So that clay bowl is still there, even though the home is sitting down in it. So pay attention now on this bottom right slide. You can see that water is actually building up adjacent to the foundation walls. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yep. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. So look, builders know this, and building codes, they attempt to address this problem, this hydrostatic pressure that builds up next to the home, because water obviously seeks to level itself out. That's what creates hydrostatic pressure to begin with. So how the residential building codes across the US have addressed this scenario is what we call is with two products, and the first is damp proofing. So that's basically a tar liner or a waterproofing liner that is put on the outside of the foundation wall. And then the second component that they look at is actually a drainage system or a drain tile system that is it's typically on the outside of the home, but sometimes it can even be on the inside, that is directed to a sump pump, that is on the inside of the home primarily. So that is how they attempt to address that hydrostatic pressure, that clay bowl effect that we see. And it's funny, Tim, because when you speak with homeowners, it's not uncommon that they'll tell you, well, I think my house was built on a spring or some sort. Mm-hmm. And it's typically not that, right? If it's built on a spring, you'll see multiple inches of water inside your basement. But what's going on most of the time is actually this clay bowl scenario. And then I'll end with a third component of just other things that may be affecting a leaky basement. If you have broken or clogged gutters and downspouts, that can put additional water into your backfill, right? You're putting more water into that clay bowl by having that. Obviously, poor grading. If you have grading that is slanted towards your home, that is going to put more water in that clay bowl. And then the last two things to mention are cracks or gaps in your foundation. The thing about cracks and gaps is, as that hydrostatic pressure builds in the clay bowl, because you have because it has direct access through a crack in your foundation, that water is going to get in even faster. And then lastly, we do run a lot of appointments here in Denver and even throughout all of the different brands that Groundworks, is part of the Groundworks brands of companies. We see a lot of clogged window wells. So window wells will actually fill up kind of like a fishbowl, and then they can leak right through the window. So those are the main things that cause a basement to leak, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to note, Brian, that these same causes that are causing these wet basements are very similar to why crawl space leak. And some of the crawl space waterproofing techniques are actually similar to the basement waterproofing techniques that we'll talk about as well. So you're a homeowner and your basement or your crawl space is wet. It's important to address the issue as quickly as possible to prevent damage to your home. However, there are a few different ways to waterproof your home. Today, we'll discuss two main methods. The methods are interior waterproofing and exterior waterproofing. Brian, let's start by taking a closer look at exterior waterproofing.
Yeah, absolutely. So exterior waterproofing, Tim, the way you can sum this up is it's just basically waterproofing that is done obviously on the outside of the home, but essentially when we just talked about that residential building code, that damp proofing and that drain tile, it's essentially redoing that coded system. You know what I mean? So they're excavating. What they're doing is they're coming in and they're excavating all of the soil around your home. with an exterior system, and they're going to get all that soil. So that then you've got any obstructions that are in the way. You've got the porches, the decks, the air conditioning units, all of your landscaping, right? All of that is removed to basically bring the home back up to code and put that drain tile system back at the base of your foundation. So that is essentially, in a nutshell, how you do that. You're basically reapplying the damp proof on the outside and the drain tile on the outside, connecting it either on the inside to a sump pump or trying to daylight that drain tile system somewhere. If you have some slanted yard that goes extremely down grade, they could trench it out to that grade. But that's how you approach an exterior system.
Okay. And theoretically, exterior waterproofing sounds great, right? Are there any downfalls to the system that you'll typically see in homes?
Yeah, there are. So first off, the pros, right? That there is a positive here, and that is that all the work is done from the outside of the home, right? So it's a major benefit to if a customer has a finished basement already, then that would be the one benefit that I could say that hey, this is a system that at least you don't have to tear out your entire basement. The problem with it is, though, Tim, or the negatives to it, as you put it, are, look, we waterproof homes all of the time, right? It became code in the U.S. around the 1970s to put this damp proof and these drain tile systems on the outside of the home or even on the inside connected to a sump system. And we fix these all the time, right? We are fixing these problems all of the time. So these systems are prone to clogging. And so basically you've got this drain tile system, and it's typically a black corrugated drainage pipe that has a filter fabric around it. And then you've got 5, 6, 7, 8 feet of soil above that drain system. And then when water is washing down through that backfill, it's bringing silt and sediment and debris with it. And what ends up happening is those drain tile systems will clog. And it'll either clog solid, like dirt will get inside the drain system itself and clog it, or what also can happen is enough silt, which is basically a really fine soil particle, will get in the filter fabric around the drainage system, and then it will clog it. So, like I said, we fix these all of the time. The current residential building code just is not a guaranteed dry basement. It's not a fully warranted dry basement. So, for those customers that do already have a finished basement, I would not recommend you approaching this from the outside. Other pieces to an exterior system, other negatives, Tim, we kind of talked about it a little bit already, but you have to remove all of your landscaping, all of your, any obstruction that's in the way from excavating that soil, right? And so you got to take about 4, 5, 6 feet of soil around the entire perimeter of your home. So however many obstructions, you'll have to redo that. So it's very, very expensive. It's expensive. The system itself is probably the most expensive approach already, not even taking into account moving your air conditioning units and moving your, anything that you have, landscaping that you have to redo around the home. And then finally, it's a multi-day, you're talking a week plus project to get that exterior waterproofing job done. So they're not very highly recommended. I will tell you that, Tim.
Sure. And it sounds like, a big investment of time and money for something that's just going to eventually fail, right? So what about interior waterproofing? What can homeowners expect for these systems versus the exterior systems?
Yeah, so obviously interior waterproofing is waterproofing from within the home. So it's that's what it is. I think it's implicit in the name what it is. But depending on which system and products you choose, the general idea of interior waterproofing is to catch the water as it comes into your home and channel it to a sump pump or pump and pumping system that will take that water up and out of the house and then take it away from your backfill and away from that clay bowl. So it's a much superior system to an exterior system because, look, Tim, the bottom line is that they're just, and I just want to hit this. I should have hit it on the exterior piece, but there's just no way to seal water out of your home. There just isn't. And no professional waterproofer would approach waterproofing a home permanently with any sort of sealant at all. If there was a way to seal water out, that's what we'd be doing, right? That is the approach that we would be taking every single time. It just doesn't work. Water is too intrusive of a substance. It's going to level itself out. It's going to get into that home because, like we said, you know, the damp proofing and the drain tile is put on there day one, and it has for millions of homes over the last 50 years. But you know, so with an interior system, what we're doing is we're going to catch that water, right? We're going to get that water before it becomes an issue, so you can accomplish the mission or whatever you're trying to accomplish with your basement. So typical products that are used in an interior system are obviously interior drainage systems, a redundant sump pump system, so that has not only redundancy built into the AC powered pumps, but also a DC battery backup sump system is vitally important as well for when you have power outages or maybe a circuit breaker gets tripped, or you know, maybe your grandkids or your kids unplug a pump or two. And so that's a huge part of that sump pump system. Dehumidifiers are an important part as well. And we at Complete Basement Systems, we use an actual air system. So we approach that with an air system, which has dehumidification properties as well. You know, you'll also have vapor barriers. You need to have a proper vapor barrier on the interior of your wall. And then it is wise to seal cracks, but just sealing the cracks is not, once again, I want to be really clear here. That is a component of a system, but it is not a full system. Just sealing cracks is not a permanent waterproofing method. So your pros here, your benefits, Tim, these systems are permanent. So if an interior system is done correctly, it will be a permanent solution. Okay, which, you know, our customers' main motivations for finishing their basement are to finish, or for waterproofing their basement is to finish the basement. That's probably the primary one customers are looking to do, right? You want to finish your basement. You don't want to do it twice. So step one to finishing a basement is actually a fully warranted dry basement. The next thing that customers like to do is just have dry usable space. So some customers aren't really looking to actually finish their basement, but they do want to store items down there, and they don't want those items to get ruined from high humidity levels or groundwater seepage. So they want to protect those items. And then the last big why that we see customers waterproofing basements for is to max their property value. And it's interesting because obviously I know throughout the entire country, and certainly here in Denver, there is just not very many homes on the market. There just isn't. So if you want to really, and the neat thing that we're seeing here, so it's kind of shifted, right? Before and over the past 10 years, it's really been, okay, you might not be able to sell your home if you don't waterproof your basement, or you won't get what the actual value of your home should be. Okay. So that's been the primary motivation for people looking to maximize their property value. Well, really, you just tip that on its other side. So here in Colorado, I'll just give you an idea. We'll have a house go on the market, and it'll have, you know, they'll have these showings set at like 15-minute intervals, right? And you'll get all these different homeowners coming in, and they'll bid, you know, 10 over asking or 20 over asking, or I mean, shoot, we're seeing homes go 100 over asking here in parts of Denver, and I know we're seeing that across the country. So having a fully warranted dry basement is going to help you get, you know, from that 50 over asking to that 100 over asking. And so now it's not that you won't sell your home if you don't have a fully warranted dry basement, right? It's not that you won't sell it. It's that now you won't get that offer that's way above asking, because you know, the customer will do that with the home that's just dialed in, ready to go. A couple of neat things about interior systems is There's little to no disturbance of the home on the outside. The only disturbance typically is to bury your discharge from your sump pumps. It's a very quick installation. 90+% of these jobs can be completed in one day. So remember, we talked about with exterior, it's a multi, typically 5-day plus multi-week project. We're talking one day, two at the max. And then it is a fully warranted dry basement. And I want to be really clear here, folks, that you homeowners that are listening, look, professional waterproofers have been waterproofing homes. I know it sounds counterintuitive. I know it, everything in you, because I was in that boat 10 years ago when I started in this industry. I was like, well, waterproofing from the inside, that seems crazy. Like, why wouldn't we, right, Tim? Why wouldn't we approach it from the outside, prevent that water from getting in?
Yeah.
Look, if you truly want to have a dry basement, if you truly want to finish it, you must approach the problem from the inside. As counterintuitive as it feels and sounds, the only way, and we're talking millions of homes have been waterproofed from the inside. They do not leak when they're waterproofed on the inside properly. So that's kind of the last little piece I want to throw out there with interior waterproofing systems, is that's the way to go, and we've got the data to support it. So, yep.
Yeah, those are all great points, Brian. I appreciate you being emphatic with your beliefs here, because we think it's important for homeowners to understand the differences between interior and exterior. So ultimately they can decide for themselves what the best solution is. The more they understand what the ins and outs and the pros and cons of these differing systems are out there, because there's a lot of misinformation. I'd like to take a minute. We're gonna jump into basement waterproofing do's and don'ts. But before we move on to that, just want to remind you guys again to go ahead and submit any questions you may have into the chat, and then we'll do our best to answer those at the end. But let's move on to a little segment, 5 basement waterproofing do's and don'ts. I'm going to throw a couple at you, Brian, and you tell me, do or don't. So number 1, apply DIY waterproofing paint, AKA negative side waterproofing. Do or don't?
Yeah, so this is a hard don't. Okay, this is a hard don't, Tim, and let me explain why. Look, we've already talked about how homes are built in the last 50 years with that exterior damp proof, that waterproofing membrane on the outside of the home. If that is failing, right? If that is failing when done in conjunction, by the way, with a drainage system and a sump pump, if we're waterproofing homes that way, how do you think putting some sort of sealant or membrane on the interior of the home is gonna have any more success than that? So that's step 1. And look, homeowners out there, there's brands out there, there's products out there that you can find at the big box store that advertise that if you put this on the interior of your basement wall, you'll be leak free. And unfortunately, like here in Denver, we've fixed over 250,000 homes since 1999. We fix about 75 homes each and every week here in Denver. I can't tell you the number of times I have seen, and just here in Denver, but then over the last 10 years of being in this industry, I can't tell you the number of horror stories I've had where customers come in and they buy these products at the big box stores. They go and they spend 20, 30, 40 grand on finishing their basements, thinking that they did the right thing, right? Hey, I saved a little bit of money on the waterproofing system, and then had to redo their entire basement because of groundwater seepage in the future. Look, it's painful for me just to hear the stories when I'm with these homeowners, showing them, what it's going to take to do a proper waterproofing system. So the bottom line is, Tim, I know I've said this a couple times already. If there was a way to seal water out, I promise you this. I promise you, if there was a way to seal water out, that is what professional basement waterproofers would be doing. That's what we'd be doing. Yeah. Because there just isn't a way to seal it out. Water is too invasive. Hydrostatic pressure is too invasive. It is going to get in.
But I'm pretty sure, Brian, it might have been a bad dream, but I saw a commercial where a guy takes a boat with a hole in it, paints a screen door, and it floats, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen that video as well, and I do believe, if I might throw this out there, I do believe there's another video floating around on YouTube or online that shows that boat or that screen door sinking fairly shortly thereafter in the outtakes. So
Oh, okay,
yeah,
I missed the follow-up video apparently. So
yeah,
well,
you got to do a little bit of searching online.
that's right. Yeah, good. Do my Google. So
Yep.
let's go on to number two. Use a dehumidifier. You mentioned earlier about a dehumidifier. Is that a
Yep.
do or a don't?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a must-have. This is a must-have appliance for your basement, okay, or even your crawl space, as you mentioned earlier. It's vital. It's really vital in a crawl space too. Here's why, right? So basements, even once a basement has a proper, and I'm talking an interior drainage system, a vapor barrier that's permanently fastened and connected to your foundation wall. So it's taking all any and all wall leakage and even vapor that's being captured from the walls themselves. It's taking that down into your drainage system. Even once you have that, and then you have that redundant pump system that we talked about a second ago with multiple AC and even a DC powered pump, you still have concrete floors, right? And you still have your rim joist area that's just a block of wood, and then your siding. It's the wood that you see right above your foundation wall, Tim. So that's what that's going to do, is it's going to allow unconditioned air and humidity in, or water vapor in through the concrete and in through the rim joist. So it's not uncommon to see a basement have high humidity levels in the spring and in the summer and even the fall. It's a little bit less in the winter, but it does happen in the winter sometimes too. But mostly the spring, summer, fall, you'll see high humidity levels in a basement, and really, especially in a crawl space, you'll see high humidity levels. So what a dehumidifier does is it's going to lower the dehumidification, or it's going to lower the humidity levels in the basement and take that, so that humidity isn't causing additional issues. So the thing here that we need to touch on is there's three things that can cause mold growth, Tim. All right, there's three things. So one is mold spores, two is organic material, and three is humidity in the environment to produce mold. There's nothing we can do about mold spores, right? There's mold spores in the air that we breathe, and they're microscopic. You don't see them, but you can't really 100% mitigate mold spores from being inhaled or being in the environment of your basement. Also, I'm assuming most of the homeowners out there don't want to replace their wood floor systems and get rid of all the organic material in your home. It would be near impossible and astronomically expensive. So what we can do, though, what we 100% can do, is we can make sure that your humidity levels are low enough that they will never ever support mold growth on any of the organic materials in your home. So that's one of the core reasons why dehumidification, other than just eliminating the humidity levels, right, that's going to come through the floor and through the rim joist. Even when you have a fully warranted system, right, you still need dehumidification. But that's the next piece, is it's going to prevent that mold growth. The other thing that I want to touch on here is, look, once again, Mr. Homeowner and Miss Homeowner out there, you can buy dehumidifiers at your big box stores, right? You can go out there and find dehumidifiers. Because they'll be sitting right by the door when you come in. I'm sure they're right now sitting by the door when you go into your big box stores. So look, here's the deal. These store-bought systems, they cover usually about a 10 by 10 square foot or 10 by 10 area, which is 100 square feet of your basement. So I know that most of our viewers out there have basements that are quite a bit larger than that. So you would need multiple units just to cover the area of your basement. But the other piece to that is the systems, and really we call it an air system when you're complete basement systems, because what we use is more of an appliance, to be honest with you. So our system is going to cover about 3,000 square feet, and it's also going to clean the air down to 3 microns in size, Tim. So 3 microns, just to give it a little bit of perspective. So what is a micron? Well, shoot, a human hair is about 10 microns in diameter. So 3 microns, when we clean that air down to 3 microns, we're cleaning all the dust mites, the dust mite droppings, and many of the mold spores that we're cleaning those out of the air. And then so you're going to be breathing cleaner air, not only in the basement, but actually up on the main living area as well, because air travels from the bottom to the top through our home. It's called the stack effect. So last thing I'll hit on, I know I'm a little wordy, Tim, so I apologize. Just
you're just very passionate about dehumidifiers, Brian.
Look, I wasn't 10 years ago, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, how important are these for a system?
And once you learn some things, it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff to know.
Yeah. So other than you know, your big box dehumidifier is not really covering the basement, certainly not adding any of that additional benefit for the rest of the home that our systems would have. A lot of times they're not self-draining, so you got to go and drain the bucket, right? And they're not energy efficient, so because they're just going to run and run and run, because there's your humidity levels, it's not being addressed throughout the entire basement, so it's going to pull water out, but it's just going to run and run and run, and it's not energy efficient, and they're going to burn up. They burn up quickly. These usually last a year or two. And then there's no annual maintenance, right? So once it burns up, what are you going to do with it? You're not going to call the company to come out and fix it. You're going to throw it in the trash, and then you're going to go buy another one, and you're going to keep doing that every year, like many of our customers. So anyway, long story short, yes, dehumidifier is good.
That's a definite do.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to number 3. Rely on an interior drain placed next to the footer. So that's a little bit more specific. Is that do or don't next to the footer?
Yeah, that's a don't, Tim. You're getting a little bit closer with this system, and like I think I mentioned it earlier with your damp proofing and your exterior drain tiles. So actually, the way that some builders are approaching the drainage system, I know that the home that I have here in Colorado was done this way. It actually has this interior footing drain instead of the exterior one. So this is a positive step from the one on the outside, because the one on the outside, and I didn't mention this earlier, but it can actually be, other than clogged, it can actually be crushed by the weight of soil that's put on it. When you put that 5 to 8, 9 feet of backfill on it, it could be crushed. So the one that's done on the inside doesn't fear being crushed, right? It won't be crushed. But the problem is it's still in the dirt. Okay, so that's the issue with it, is that it's still in the dirt. So anytime you put a system in the dirt, you run the risk of clogging and failing. So that's why we fix these just as often as we fix the ones on the outside, because look, it's in the dirt. So don't do that.
All right. And so let's move on to number 4. Apply a DIY foundation crack sealant. Are you a do or don't on crack sealants?
So look, I'm a don't. And you know, there are some foundation repair experts out there that will recommend sealing cracks, and candidly, we will seal cracks with an epoxy system, but that is not for waterproofing, really, right? It's not a waterproofing system. And the bigger thing, we'll seal them, just seal them behind the vapor barrier that we're putting up. The vapor barrier is doing all the work, though. But the thing to mention here isn't really the fact that it's a don't when it comes to basement waterproofing. The thing here to mention is anytime you have a crack in your foundation, that crack really is not supposed to be there. So you'll see horizontal or vertical cracks, and those will mean different things. If you see cracks in your foundation, you need to get a foundation repair expert. Any one of the 17 Groundworks brands is going to be a professional, and they're going to do a complimentary inspection. You need to have somebody come out. You either have probably some wall failure going on, if it's a horizontal crack, or if it's a vertical, you might have some foundation settlement going on. And so you need to address those. Those are separate issues from basement waterproofing or crawl space waterproofing. And you need to have that looked at. And I'll tell you, you know, here at Complete, and then all of the different brands in the Groundworks umbrella are going to offer a complimentary inspection of your home. And we would love to come out and look at that and let you know what's going on. So
yeah, that's perfect. Don't cover it up and pretend it doesn't exist, right? Get it looked at.
Yeah, yeah, and we've seen that over the years, Tim. You mentioned it, but I've seen folks, put drywall up and stub their wall out in the basement, and they call us out a few years later because that wall is now bowed in so much it's pushing inward on the drywall, causing all sorts of issues. So, not a good idea to cover it up. That is a larger issue. You got to address it. So,
for sure. So let's go on to number 5. Maintain your gutters and downspouts. Where are you at? Do or don't?
Yeah, you absolutely want to do this. This is a positive step. Gutters and downspouts, and look, all they're doing is they're taking the water when it rains. They're taking the water and even snow melt when it melts on top of the roof, and they're diverting it away from that clay bowl that we talked about earlier. Right? That's what a downspout is supposed to do. So if your downspout is any less than 5-6 feet out, it's really taking all of the water from your roof and just dumping it in your clay bowl, and then your hydrostatic pressure is building and causing additional groundwater seepage. So you absolutely should do and maintain your gutters, keep the leaves out and all the debris, and then get that water out away from the clay bowl. The thing that I want to advise our homeowners on, though, and this is really, really important because it can be tempting. You could think that, okay, I'll put some dirt next to my home, get some grading away from my home. I'll put new gutters and new downspouts, make sure all that roof water is getting out and away from the home. There's a reason why a gutter company is not going to give you a warranted, fully warranted dry basement. There is no warranty that your basement's going to stay dry with this system for a reason. Once again, if we could waterproof your basement by doing gutters, guess what we'd be doing? Right? We'd be doing gutters. That's what we'd be doing. That's how we would waterproof basements. Do not ever finish your basement after putting a new gutter system on, because once again, just like some of the other things we've mentioned, I have countless customer stories of doing so and having to redo everything they did in the basement, or losing really cherished items because of humidity and getting wet. So it's great to do this, but it is not a fully warranted dry basement. It's not a basement waterproofing system at all. Okay. So, and then I just do want to mention one other thing, Tim. On the contrary, I'll tell you this: our basement waterproofing systems are robust enough that without gutters and downspouts, you could have a very positive system. You could have a dry basement. We still, once again, 100% recommend gutters and downspouts. You should absolutely do it. It's important for the health of your home. But our systems are strong enough that we could do it. So we can waterproof your home. So,
and just eliminate the gutters. Sounds like a bad idea. But
it's a bad idea. I'm just saying, it's a bad idea, but I'm just kind of comparing.
Yeah, you're making a point. No, I get it. Yeah, great insight on those 5, Brian. I appreciate that. If anybody's watching today is looking for flood damage tips or ways for spring flood, we did a segment last month. You can go back and review that Groundworks live segment we did last month. But I want to transition, Brian, here to we know why basements leak now and how waterproofing professionals can help. We also know some basement waterproofing do's and don'ts in that little segment we just did. But for some areas in the U.S., and you kind of touched on this earlier, they're encountering the opposite of spring flooding, right? Too much water. They're actually seeing these drought conditions. So what are we looking at as far as when you got those abnormally dry conditions? What's the impact of a home? How's that affecting a home when there's not enough rainfall?
Yeah, so your big fear here, and I already mentioned, you could get wet under a really heavy rain, because you see these cracks on this left picture here, and basically the water can just penetrate down more quickly into that clay bowl and fill it up rapidly, and you can get wet sometimes when you're in the drought and you get a heavy rain. We do see that. But really, what you're exposed to even more than that is a failing foundation wall, or the home, the soil under the home causing the wall to settle. So we mentioned it a second ago, but clay soil, when it shrinks, when it loses moisture, so when we have a drought or we have less rain than we need, that soil shrinks. Okay, and what happens is when that soil shrinks underneath your home, So if it shrinks underneath the footing and the foundation wall, right, all the weight of your home, if that soil shrinks away from that weight, the weight of your home is going to want to seek to sit on something substantial, right? I mean, I know we've all stood. You probably walked in sand before, and you compress into that sand, or you basically foundations won't float for very long, is what I'm trying to say. When that soil shrinks away from the weight of our home, and so you can see those foundations settle. This is where we talked about earlier with those vertical cracks and even the horizontal cracks on the side of your home. If you're seeing those, Mr. Customer, you absolutely should go to groundworks.com, find the brand that's in your area that covers your area, and get a complimentary inspection. It's no cost to you to have us come out. We'll do a full inspection of your foundation and let you know what's going on. So
yeah, this is great information to know, Brian. For the homeowners out there, what are some of the signs and symptoms that their foundation is being affected by dry or drought conditions? Not as easy to spot maybe as some of the water or the wetness, right? So what are they looking at for potential problems, signs and symptoms?
Yeah. So I mentioned the cracks, the vertical and horizontal. I mentioned kind of, so what can happen is as you get these spring rains, so when a wall is leaning in, if it's a poured wall, it can lean in, or if it's bowed, if it's a block wall, it could actually bow in, right? So what can cause that is really three things in the soil: the weight of the soil itself, but then a big component is the weight of the water in the soil. So water weighs about 8 pounds a gallon. And so when you have thousands of gallons of water in your backfill, and then that's also combining with that clay soil, causing that soil to swell and push on your wall, we'll see failing and bowing walls. So leaning or bowing walls in your home. And so that's something to look out for. Okay. That's something to absolutely look out for. And then sticking windows or doors. So if you've got doors that are sticking right now, especially exterior doors, that's probably a sign that your foundation is shifting or settling, dropping in some areas. If you see cracks around your windows or doors, see the framing around our homes. So windows and doors are just a little bit weaker than the rest of our framed walls. So cracks, drywall cracks will typically manifest themselves around windows and doors more often than not. And then sagging or slanting floors. So look, if you're having issues where you're having to re-level your pool table all the time, or you're trying to roll the ball to your 2-year-old son and trying to play with them, and it's kind of veering off to the side, guess what? Your floor is not level. I don't know, you probably know that already, but your floor is not level. That's an issue. It could be an issue with the floor system and the spanning capacity of the lumber, or it could be a foundation issue. So have us out to look at that. And then one other thing to look at here, you see this picture on the right where the chimney is leaning away from the home. So chimneys typically, the chimneys have a foundation underneath of them, just like the rest of our home. But that foundation is not always as deep as the foundation or the basement itself, okay? So what can happen is chimneys can move faster than the rest of our home, because if you're going through a drought or even a rainy season, and that rain or that drought gets beneath the chimney's footing faster because it's not as deep, well, the soil dries out, or the soil gets overly saturated with water, and then the chimney can fall away from the home. And you just don't want that. It's much less expensive to protect and permanently stabilize your chimney versus what it costs to rebuild the chimney once it's fallen and potentially hitting your neighbor's house as well. So once again, I've mentioned it twice. I'll hit it a third time, Tim. Complimentary inspections. We give full. We're happy to come out and diagnose these problems for you. We're actually the type of company, and I know homeowners out there. I want to just plug this real quick. This is big. Like, this is why I got into this industry. This is why I work at Complete Basement Systems, which is a Groundworks company, by the way, right? So look, all of our CFIs, what we call certified field inspectors, are 100% fully trained, okay? And they're going to diagnose these problems, and they're going to build a customized solution for you in your home. That's important, right? These problems are not all the same. So you need a customized solution for your home. But one thing that separates us, Tim, and this is something we're very, very proud of, okay? And I know you homeowners out there, you've had this problem before. We're professional enough and dialed in enough because we fix so many homes where we're going to give you an exact price the day of the appointment, okay? That's something that separates us. We actually will give you an exact price to repair these solutions. And once again, it's a complimentary. There's no price to have us come out. It's a complimentary inspection, but we're so dialed in and ready to go that you're not going to have to be calling us 10 times and hope. First off, you're not going to have to hope that we show up. We're going to be there at a specific time, and you're not going to have to hope that we're going to educate you and show you exactly what's going on with your home. But then you're not going to wonder if we want to help you out either. We do want to help you out, and we're going to help you out with an exact, a comfortable monthly investment and the exact price. So.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, Brian and his whole team out in Colorado, they are very passionate about experience, for homeowners that are experiencing these foundation issues or basement waterproofing. So it's not just Brian, the whole team out there is super excited to get out and help out you guys. So we're just going to recap and then we'll get to the questions. Today, we covered why do basements leak, some of the ways that we can solve some of the basement waterproofing issues. We went over those waterproofing do's and don'ts, and then covering what drier weather or those drought conditions, how that can impact your home. So I want to thank you again, Brian, for joining us, and thank you for the viewers for tuning in. And I hope you guys learned something new. We covered a lot of information today. So if you have any questions, definitely putting them in the chat as we go over the couple questions we do have. And always you can go to groundworks.com and search there. But Brian, I'm going to read off a couple of questions we've got coming in and pass them over to you for you to touch base on some of these. So let's see. First one, I have a newer construction home built in 2016, and I've noticed vertical cracks forming in my poured concrete foundation. No water has leaked in through yet, but I want to finish the basement, and I don't know if the cracks are normal or if they should be addressed first. What should I do?
Yep. So obviously what you should do is obviously have the complimentary inspection, but a little bit of insight on what's going on. So with a poured foundation, between the pans, when they poured your foundation, they set up forms and they poured that concrete between those forms. And those forms are usually about 4 feet 4 feet wide. So every 4 feet, you see this kind of break in the concrete where it's naturally weaker. So it's not uncommon to see what we call shrinkage cracks in those areas. Every 4 feet, typically, you might end up with a shrinkage crack. So two things. Sometimes these shrinkage cracks can be settlement and sometimes they're not. But I do want to tell this homeowner that, look, these almost always leak. These cracks almost always end up leaking. So please don't finish your basement before looking at doing a basement waterproofing system that's going to prevent it from leaking.
For sure.
I've seen it a bunch of times. And then it could be settlement as well. And we have tools and diagnostics to determine if it's just a basement waterproofing project before you finish, or if it's a settlement and basement waterproofing project that you should be considering. So. Yeah.
Eventually water's going to find that path of least resistance, like that crack, right? It's going to find its way in eventually. So don't risk it. All right, next question. My home doesn't have a basement, but it does have a crawl space. Normally one of the two, maybe a slab. But is it possible to waterproof a crawl space, Brian? If so, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so it's not only possible, but it's vital. It's vital. So typically with your crawl space, here's the deal, folks. You've got your wood, your organic flooring system, and it's closer to the dirt, right? So a crawl space has a dirt floor, and it's usually, anywhere from, gosh, we see 6 inches to 4 feet usually in a crawl space. And so you've got that dirt and that moisture right there. It's right there against that wood floor system. So we approach it the exact same way with some additional items that we do. So with a crawl space, Tim, we're going to do a drainage system all the way around the perimeter with a redundant pumping system. Okay, so that's a huge part, right? With any basement waterproofing or crawl space waterproofing system, that's how you get the water. Okay, but with a crawl space, you absolutely have to encapsulate that crawl space. So with the crawl space, we want to isolate the home from the earth. Okay. That's kind of the term that you want to be thinking about. You want to isolate the home from the earth, and then dehumidification. So having a proper air system, remember the difference. So our air systems are going to clean the air, and they're actually going to address the entire crawl space, is an absolute must. You must not waterproof and encapsulate your crawl space without proper air system put in. Okay, that is a vital component, because then you'll have that unconditioned air coming through the rim joist and through other areas, and that humidity level will rise very quickly in that crawl space because it's going to trap it once you've encapsulated it and waterproofed it. So you be very careful there, Mr. and Miss Homeowner, that you don't skip that step. But yeah, so your question, and I know I get it. I'm super wordy, but you can waterproof a crawl space, and you must waterproof your crawl space, because if you don't, that moisture continues to subsist in the crawl space. Guess what? Humidity levels rise. We talked about it earlier. Humidity, mold spores, organic material, mold growth, fungal growth, and that's going to degrade your floor system. Not to mention bugs and pests love wet, damp environments. So we've had just so many customers, especially throughout our southeast brands that have these crawl spaces, that they waited and waited, and then they're talking a bunch of floor system repair and supports and stuff other than just the basement or the crawl space and encapsulation waterproofing system. So
yeah, you don't want your floor system to end up as mold food, right? So right. Definitely waterproofing and encapsulating. Next question we have here, I'm sure this is on a lot of people's minds. On average, how much does waterproofing system cost?
Yeah. Well, look, this is why it's so important to have a professional come out and give you a customized solution for your home, right? So, but typical, and then maybe that's like casting the question aside. So here's what determines cost. So there's really two factors: the size of your home, right? So the larger the home, the more the system may cost, and then the amount of protection you're considering having. So those are really the two factors that go into it. And any one of our CFIs is gonna walk you through all of your various options, because look, it's your house and it's your money, and so it's got to be your system. So but we'll walk you through all of your options, and so we can create a customized solution for you and your budget.
Excellent. Next question, how do you address the water pressure around a foundation with interior waterproofing? So I think they're talking about that hydrostatic pressure that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so good question. So when you have a block home, when you have a CMU home, they're actually going to drill little tiny weep holes in the blocks themselves to allow that water pressure to alleviate itself. And we're not as concerned about it because a poured foundation wall is going to be quite a bit stronger, both laterally and vertically. So we're not as worried about it with that. But as far as alleviating or addressing that water pressure around the foundation, it's not enough that it's going to cause an issue. Really, the weight of the soil and frost is going to be a more predominant issue that's causing wall failure. But with the interior waterproofing system, we'll drill little weep holes to alleviate that. So great question, really insightful question. Actually, I don't typically get that one on even on appointments. So
yeah, I think it must have been that hydrostatic pressure you were talking. It kind of sounds a little scary, maybe. Yeah. So it looks like that's all we have for questions today, and I want to thank everybody that tuned in for today's segment. Also thanking Brian again for joining us. Make sure that you keep an eye out in June for our next Groundworks Live segment. Until then, if you have any questions or concerns about today's information that we covered, go ahead and go to groundworks.com. Appreciate you guys. Thanks again, Brian.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you having me on.